Nissan's third generation X Trail has matured very nicely as a crossover model that sits just above the brand's popular Qashqai and borrows much of its technology from that best-selling car. X Trail buyers, though, get significantly more space, with the option of 7 seats, in a model that's slightly tougher and more suitable for more adventurous families. If you like the thought of a crossover but still need something practical and capable, then this Nissan looks worth checking out.
It can take any product a little while to find its niche. Take the Nissan X Trail, specifically this one, the third generation version, a car that finally seems to have found its place in the market. It's taken quite a time to do that, mind you. X Trail sales in this country going all the way back to 2001, when this model was first launched as a kind of RAV4 style soft-roading SUV. Unfortunately, that car wasn't stylish enough to be a RAV, nor were its off-road abilities enough to take on the other segment favourite, Land Rover's Freelander. So Nissan tried again in 2007 with a Mark II model that looked and felt tougher, bluffer, and more of a practical tool. The kind of thing you'd have thought a compact SUV should be. Unfortunately, most target customers disagreed. The second generation X Trail hitting its stride in the market just as people were beginning to abandon precisely these kinds of cars in favour of less capable but much smarter and more dynamic crossover models like Nissan's own Qashqai. It's the Qashqai that's provided much of the inspiration for the Mark III X Trail we're going to look at here, launched in the summer of 2014. The two cars share their underpinnings and engine wear while using much of the same technology. But while the Qashqai can no longer be had in +2 form with 7 seats, this larger X Trail model now gets that option for the very first time. It's also better suited to light off-road excursions thanks to a slightly loftier ride height and the wider availability of Nissan's all-mode 4x4i all-wheel drive system. In other words, if you like the idea of a Qashqai, as a lot of people seem to, but need something a little tougher and more practical, then this car should prove to be a perfect fit. If it is, then you probably won't need something capable of crossing the Serengeti, and you won't get it. Forget hardcore SUV Nissan models like the Navara pickup, the Pathfinder and the Patrol. This car sits firmly in the softer crossover segment, slotting in just above the little Duke and the medium-sized Qashqai, and just below the more luxurious Murano in the Japanese brand's growing range. Time to put it to the test. Now, if you didn't already know that Nissan was positioning this X Trail as more of a sporty crossover than a clunky SUV, then you might guess the fact from a seat behind the wheel. Though still quite commanding, the driving position's a little less lofty than it used to be, which will certainly make transition into this car from something more conventional a little easier. Under the skin lie a shared selection of Qashqai mechanicals which I'd expected would deliver in this model quite an enjoyable road-going experience. Certainly a more dynamic drive than is actually provided. You can, after all, flash a cash at quite a testing series of corners and emerge on the other side with a surprisingly wide grin on your face. In an X Trail, you'll find a lot of that vitality tempered down. Now, perhaps that's down to this model's larger size. Or maybe Nissan felt that likely buyers with larger families would be less interested in throwing this car around. Whatever the truth, this crossover isn't one of those that'll encourage you into finding a twistier route back from the supermarket, despite an active trace control system that imperceptibly brakes individual wheels through tighter bends to reduce understeer and quicken progress through the turns. What it can do, though, is smooth your way over bumpy surfaces that would upset other cars in this class, something this Nissan has always been very good at. It comes properly equipped for the task too, unlike its smaller Qashqai stablemate, which has to make do with a penny-pinching, old-tech rear torsion beam suspension setup on all but the expensive 4x4 models. The X Trail, in contrast, gets a proper multi-link rear axle fitted right across the range. This engineered to work with an active ride control system that monitors the road surface to detect undulations, which could potentially cause the car to pitch about, then altering the damping to compensate. The resulting advantages are felt not only over bumpy urban journeys, but also with the well-controlled standards of body roll through tighter bends. The range as a whole provides a choice of 2- or 4-wheel drive configurations, but doesn't offer many options beneath the bonnet. Yes, you can talk to your dealer about a 163 PS, 1.6 litre DIGT turbocharged petrol engine, but hardly any buyers choose it, directed instead to a single diesel unit that's smaller than you'd expect to find in a car of this sort. What do I mean by that? Well, just look at direct diesel competitors to this car. They all need power plants of at least 2 litres in size, and even then are usually less than thrilling away from the lights. There's cause for concern then in Nissan's decision to fit this car exclusively with a DCI unit of just 1.6 litres, particularly when you learn that it develops a decidedly conservative 130 PS, a full 43 PS less than the 2-litre DCI engine used in this car's direct predecessor. On the road, this is less of an issue than it is on the spec sheet. As the engineers rightly point out, this downsized power plant puts out just as much pulling power, 320 Newton meters of torque, as its 2-litre predecessor did, yet is 20% more efficient and comparably quick, 62 miles an hour from rest, occupying around 11 seconds en route to around 117 miles an hour. So it's win-win then? Well, not quite. What the brochures don't tell you is that you have to work a bit harder with this engine to access its performance. Not a lot happens below around 2,000 revs, which can make this car feel a little sluggish, especially if you order it in Xtronics CVT automatic gearbox form, a possibility only open to you on the 2-wheel drive variants. Also buried away in the stats is the news that with the smaller engine comes a reduced total braked towing capacity, down from 2,200 to 2,000 kilograms, which may be irritating for caravanners. These are the kinds of people likely to be interested in the all-mode 4x4i models. This system an intelligent 4-wheel drive setup that reduces understeer and gives some real capability in the rough. The setup predicts when the front wheels are slipping and directs drives to the rear with lightning speed. A rotary knob lets you choose either fuel-saving front-wheel drive, automatic 4-wheel drive with a variable torque split between front and rear axles, and a mode with the centre differential fully locked to help you crawl out of the mire. There's also uphill start support to get you up steep slopes and advanced hill descent control to ease you slowly down them. Nissan quotes a wading depth of 350 millimetres, an approach angle of 18.1 degrees and a departure angle of 26.5 degrees. Ironically, these figures aren't quite as good as those you'd achieve in a 4-wheel drive version of the brand's supposedly less capable Qashqai model. The Qashqai, though, like so many other cars of this kind, is so limited by ground clearance that such capability becomes irrelevant. You could certainly level that accusation against this X Trail's 2 main Korean rivals. Both Kia Sorento and Hyundai Santa Fe offer no more than around 180 millimetres of ground clearance, about the same as a Qashqai. Here, though, you get a full 210 millimetres. Now, the difference might not sound significant, but believe me, it will be if you ever find yourself trying to negotiate a severely rutted or tree stump speckled forest track in this car. By now, you'll probably have figured out what's going on with this 3rd generation X Trail model. In brief, it's trying to blend the sleek and stylish lines of a modern crossover with the robust appeal of a typical SUV. In place of the bluff, squared-off shape of the previous generation version, this Mark III model looks sleeker, Hints of the popular Qashqai and luxurious Murano, mixed with a dipping roofline, deeply sculpted flanks and a rising waistline. At the front, smart and intricately detailed LED headlamps cut into the bumpers, fusing both upper and lower parts of the body together with a distinctive lighting signature. The crucial bit, though, is that this car is bigger than it ever was before, 17mm longer and 30mm wider, as it needs to be to accommodate the third seating row that older X Trails were never large enough to offer. That's now possible thanks to the flexibility of the clever CMF, or Common Module Family, platform that Nissan and its partner Renault have developed for all their mainstream family segment models. This car's Qashqai stablemate was one of the first designs to use it, and here the same underpinnings have been stretched, extending the wheelbase of this car by 76mm over that of the previous version. You might think that would give you a larger boot, but in fact, when you lift the plastic tailgate, now optionally electrically operable, the 550-litre capacity on display, that's 120 litres more than you get in a Qashqai, is actually slightly less than what was on offer before. You can, though, make much better use of the space you do have, thanks to a clever double load floor in 5-seat models, which can divide the cargo area up into upper and lower sections through 18 different settings. Now, in its topmost fixing point, this board can hold up to 10 kilograms of luggage, or 75 kilograms in its middle position. Now, thanks to this split cargo solution, issues like how to transport your pet alongside the family shopping are easily solved. As usual, there's the option of extending your carriage capacity by pushing forward the split-folding rear bench. It's got a centre section for the carriage of long items. Now, pushing forward these backrests frees up a useful 1,982 litres of fresh air, which is about 20% more than you'd get in rivals like Kia's Sorento or Hyundai's Santa Fe. If you owned an old Qashqai Plus 2 7-seater model, that's the car that this X Trail effectively replaces, and ever had to use it in this configuration, you'll find that here you've over twice as much carriage capacity. It's another world. Now, in this case, we've been looking at a 5-seat X Trail. But what about if you go for the 7-seat version, as I would? Well, if you do, you'll find that the seats here fold neatly out of sight beneath the boot floor. But just how accessible are they to passengers? Well, let's see. Move inside here at the rear, and first impressions are good. The rear doors open widely to over 80 degrees for easy access, and at first glance the cabin looks as spacious as the cold statistics promise. If, though, you've been confined to the very rearmost chairs, you've to clamber over the folded middle row seats to take your place. Once you're there, space is at something of a premium. Certainly it'll be fine for kids or medium-sized adults on short journeys, but you shouldn't make the mistake of thinking of this Nissan as being directly comparable to the kind of Galaxy or Chiron-sized large MPV you could get yourself for much the same sort of money. But then no family-sized crossover or SUV model of this sort ever is. A couple of things help the X Trail's cause here, though. First, the theatre-style seating layout that gives passengers a better view of the road ahead and will make them feel a little better about their confined quarters. And secondly, the fact that you can alter the backrest angle of the second row seats and slide them backwards and forwards. So if you're nice to those ahead and your chilblains are killing you, there's a chance that folk travelling in front might help you out. Mind you, those in the middle are somewhat restricted in the assistance that they can offer to those further back. This bench does, after all, only slide backwards or forwards over a 26cm range, though the additional backrest reclining feature that I mentioned might also help. Passengers in the centre of the car who don't need to worry about third row folk can kick back and stretch right out. The extra 60 millimetres of length between the wheels that this car enjoys over its Qashqai stablemate enables it to offer class-leading standards of legroom that's further aided by these deeply sculpted front seat backs. And up front, well, back at the turn of the century, in the original first-generation version of this car, Nissan's designers went all quirky with centrally mounted dials, a proudly protruding centre stack, and weird seat fabrics. Since then, the brand has learned a few lessons about buyers in this segment. They may like to make a little bit of a statement when it comes to exterior styling, but when it comes to the interior, conservative quality tends to be the preferred approach. So that's exactly what's served up in this X Trail, with most of the design and functionality borrowed from its Qashqai stablemate. Though there's nothing here that'll scare Audi or Mercedes, the trim materials chosen and the way they've all been screwed together are certainly a vast improvement over this model's direct predecessor. Yes, the door handles still feel a bit cheap, but otherwise splashes of chrome, piano black and leather with contrast stitching all lift the ambience by several notches and create a cabin that's right on the money for this Nissan's price point. Nice to have options I'd want include a huge panoramic glass roof that has an opening front section and, as the biggest available in this class, bathes the cabin with light. There's also a special comfort seat that gives front seat passengers improved spinal support with optimised blood flow to reduce fatigue on longer journeys. As someone who suffers from back problems, that feature alone would draw me to this car. As modern interiors tend to be, this one's dominated by infotainment displays. The first of them, a 5-inch TFT colour screen you'll find between the two main instrument dials. It's called the Advanced Drive Assist Display and offers 12 graphical displays accessible on rotation and covering, amongst other things, driving aids, audio information, speed limit signs, a compass, trip computer information, a digital speed readout and tyre pressure readouts. For four-wheel drive models, this display can also show torque distribution settings so you can see how drive is being split front to rear. Turn your attention to the centre console, and on plusher models you'll get the benefit of the Nissan Connect system, operable via this 7-inch colour screen. The display provides access to the usual satellite navigation, stereo and Bluetooth streaming services. Plus there's an impressive level of smartphone connectivity that gives users access to a range of apps covering everything from music to social networking, entertainment to travel. As you would expect from this kind of car, there are plenty of practical touches too, including a console box between the front seats that's large enough to keep an iPad or a 10-inch tablet away from prying eyes. My favourite touch, though, is the way that the generously sized cup holders can have their own air supply for either cooling or warming your drink. Lovely. By the time the old second-generation X Trail model finished its production run, it was no longer offered with either two-wheel drive or entry-level spec, and as a result, looked quite an expensive car, priced at well over £25,000. This third-generation version starts afresh with both a baseline trim option and a two-wheel drive variant, so as a result can price itself more affordably at the bottom end of its model lineup. Prices starting from around £23,000 for the least expensive Vizia trimmed two-wheel drive model. At this level, though, you don't get the 4x4 and auto transmission options many buyers will want to consider. For these, you have to stretch to the second level on the trim hierarchy, a centre, at which point this returns to being a £25,000 car. What else? Well, you'll need to know that the all-mode 4x4i system is only offered with manual transmission and costs an extra £1,700. Or, if you're happy with just two driven wheels, the Xtronic Auto Gearbox will set you back just over £1,300 more. Whatever trim level you decide upon for your X Trail, ordering your car with the 7-seat option will set you back a further £700 over the cost of the variant you select. The 7-seat question's actually pretty important when it comes to deciding exactly where this car sits in its market, and therefore the value proposition it can offer. If you're quite comfortable with only 2 seating rows in this Nissan, then you'll probably be positioning it against 5-seat only crossovers like Ford's Kuga and Mazda's CX-5, comparable versions of which respectively sit just below or just above an entry-level X-Trail model's price point. And of course there are lots of other theoretical competitors that you could look at in the compact crossover bracket, some of them cheaper, like Volkswagen's Tiguan, and some a bit pricier, like Toyota's RAV4 or Honda's CR-V. All of these cars, though, offer a lot less space and flexibility than you get in an X-Trail, and in truth, I wouldn't really consider any one of them as a direct rival. In any case, if you're looking at this Nissan, I'd contend that you've really got to have it with 7 seats, which puts it into a different class from any of the models that I've just mentioned, none of which can offer this option. Even if you don't really need the 3rd seating row, just having it will make your car easier to sell on come trade-in time. Factor this in as a must-have in a car of this size and class, and your alternative options reduce dramatically. Indeed, at its launch, this Nissan was the only car of its size in its segment able to offer the affordable combination of 7 seats and 2-wheel drive. Even if you want your X-Trail with 4-wheel drive, there aren't many alternatives. For a little more, you could have a Kia Sorento, while if you're looking at a plusher, more expensive X-Trail trim level, then you might consider Hyundai Santa Fe or Mitsubishi's long-wheelbase Shogun as possible options. All these competitors, though, are less spacious inside and cost considerably more to run. For all these reasons, I'd understand if, having looked closely at the market, you decided that this Nissan was going to be your first choice. Should that be the case, then you're going to want to know just how generous the Japanese brand has been when it comes to the standard spec. And the answer is that quite a lot has been included, even at entry-level spec. All trim levels feature LED daytime running lights, 17-inch alloy wheels, power heated door mirrors, air conditioning, cruise control with a speed limiter, a 4-speaker stereo you can activate from the steering wheel, USB and aux-in sockets, plus the chassis control system that includes active engine brake, active trace control and active ride control. There's also the useful luggage board system, Bluetooth for your phone, hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and thank goodness, a proper spare wheel. As I suggested earlier though, most X-Trail buyers will want to progress to the next trim level up, a centre, in order to be able to get the 4-wheel drive and automatic gearbox options. At this level, Nissan also throws in stuff like front fog lights, auto headlamps and wipers, power folding mirrors, parking sensors, rear privacy glass, climate control and a couple of extra stereo speakers. Move even further up the range and you'll find features like leather trim, satin silver roof rails, the iKey keyless entry push-button start system and piercing bi-LED headlamps that can automatically dip themselves in the face of oncoming traffic at night. Oh, and the option of a power opening tailgate, plus this lovely panoramic glass roof. I'd also want the intelligent park assist feature that can identify a potential parking space for you, then actively steer you into it. I talked about moving up the range. Well, you do actually have to progress quite a way up the lineup to stretch to a variant with the clever Nissan Connect navigation and entertainment system fitted, operable via a larger colour infotainment touchscreen of 7 inches in size. If budget permits, though, this package is very well worth having, for it also drives what are probably the cleverest features you can have on this car, the around view monitor and safety shield system. Now, both are, of course, standard on a top variant like the one I have here, and together add in the kind of safety innovation you'd normally only expect of an executive saloon. So, how do they work? Well, the around view monitor simplifies parking by combining the feeds from small cameras mounted on the front grille both door mirrors and the tailgate, to create an overhead 360-degree helicopter view image that displays on the Connect dashboard infotainment screen that I just mentioned. The tailgate camera also provides further parking assistance via the Safety Shield setup's moving object detection system, alerting you to oncoming traffic or pedestrians when you're reversing out of a space. As part of Safety Shield, the same camera also provides a blind spot warning function that'll alert you to the danger of a potential collision when changing lanes. A clever little camera then, that even has its own wash and blow dry system to keep its image clear. There's also a drive attention support system included in the Safety Shield package that'll monitor your reactions on a journey and alert you to stop for a restorative coffee if drowsiness is sensed. Even without all this gadgetry fitted, the X Trail can be classified as a very safe place to put your family, according at least to Euro NCAP, who gave it a top 5-star rating in their tests. All models get twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus ISOFIX child seat fastenings and tyre pressure monitoring, as well as the usual electronic aids for braking, traction and stability control. Lower down the range, it's probably worth finding the small extra premium that Nissan asks for its Smart Vision Pack that adds parking sensors, an anti-dazzle rearview mirror and 3 clever camera-based features. Traffic sign recognition pictures road signs as you pass them and displays them on the dash. Lane departure warning stops dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And forward emergency braking works at low speeds to constantly scan the road ahead of you for accident hazards. If one is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will be automatically applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now, we're used to manufacturers like Nissan introducing more spacious, quicker, safer and better built cars, which somehow seem to improve on the fuel economy of their predecessors. But how exactly do they do that? Weight saving is the current engineering solution, and despite being a bigger car than before, this X Trail weighs around 90 kilograms less model for model, thanks to, mainly to Nissan's latest high-tech CMF chassis, but also to the careful design found around other aspects of the car. The tailgate, for example, is constructed largely in plastic, and that move alone has trimmed 7 kilograms from the total weight. Aero-friendly door mirrors and an underfloor spoiler that covers the exhaust and rear panel also play their part when it comes to efficiency, as does a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Even the LED headlights play their part, using 50% less power than conventional xenon bulbs. The biggest step forward when it comes to cost of ownership has come with the replacement of the previous model's 2-litre 173 PS diesel with this car's smaller, less powerful 1.6-litre 130 PS DCI unit. As a result, 57.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle is now possible from a 2-wheel drive model, along with 129 grams per kilometre of CO2. With the Xtronic CVT automatic gearbox fitted, an option only possible on 2-wheel drive variants, those figures fall only slightly to 55.4 miles to the gallon and 135 grams per kilometre. If, as I would be, you're looking at this car in 4-wheel drive form, you can expect it to return 53.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, while CO2 emissions are 18% better than the previous generation model could manage, rated at 139 grams per kilometre. To give you some perspective, that's around 20% better than the returns you'll get from directly comparable 2.2-litre Hyundai Santa Fe and Kia Sorento rivals. Of course, the driver can play his or her part too, which is easier if you're in a plusher variant fitted with the Nissan Connect infotainment screen and its clever eco-score system. Now, this scores the efficiency of your driving at the end of each trip in terms of 3 factors: pull away, deceleration and cruise, also providing a graphical history of your green friendliness to date. If you've got the Connect setup, then you'll also have a sat-nav system with so-called eco-routing, a feature that sees it able to calculate the route likely to use the least fuel. In running this car, you'll also save in other areas too. Take residuals. According to independent industry experts CAP, depreciation levels have improved by 9% with this generation model, which means that after the standard 3-year, 30,000 mile period, this car will still be worth around 53% of what you paid for it. In other words, it would have retained about £2,000 more of its value than a similarly aged, comparable version of the old Mark II model. Not only is that kind of restrained depreciation better than you'd get from other crossovers, it's also an improvement over what you'd expect a quality family hatchback like Volkswagen's Golf to achieve. Tax levels will be low too, aided by the way that lower CO2 emissions have made this Mark III model 4 tax bands lower than the model it replaced. It's dropped 10 insurance groups too. Base your quotes on either group 19 or 20, depending on the variant that you're looking at. All these gains, of course, have contributed to a very positive impact on this car's predictive whole life costs. This Mark III model will cost 10% less to run on a pence per mile basis than its predecessor, 99 pence per mile versus 110 pence per mile. Finally, there's the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty. This third generation X Trail offers much more than its predecessors ever could. Class-leading levels of space and efficiency, more appealing looks, plenty of high tech, and crucially, the option of 7 seats for those wanting it. That last feature gives this car something most compact lifestyle soft roaders can't offer, and those that can tend to be more expensive and pricier to run. So yes, I can see a significant number of family folk warming to Nissan's proposition here, particularly if they've considered a Qashqai class crossover model in the past and like the thought of one before regretfully having to move on to something more practical. This X Trail has enough crossover cues to make you feel acceptably trendy, but also enough size and space to make owners also feel that they bought into something smartly sensible. Of course, you can't have everything. This car doesn't drive with quite as much verve and flair as a smaller crossover, and the downsized 1.6-litre DCI engine can't quite deliver the pulling power that you'd get in a direct rival with a more conventional 2-litre or 2.2-litre diesel fitted. These two issues apart, though, there's not really a lot else wrong here, and the value proposition betters even that of the Korean budget brand opposition. Perhaps most importantly, there's an element of desirability in this Mark III model X Trail that was missing from its predecessors. All of which might indeed mean that if you're looking for a car of this kind, X may very well mark the spot.